Welcome, everyone, to this webinar. My name is Saher Selod, and I am the Director of Research for the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding. I've been with ISPU for almost 2 years and came from academia, where I was an associate professor of sociology who studied the racialization of Muslims. You can read my full bio in the chat. ISPU is a nonpartisan and secular research organization that conducts studies on American Muslims. I'm so excited to welcome you all here to learn more about our latest study, Stereotypes on Screen, the Effects of Muslim Portrayals on Media Entertainment. This study examines the impact of Muslim representations in the media amongst the general public. Specifically, it highlights how both negative and positive representations of Muslims in television shows impacts the general public's support for anti-democratic policies and anti-Muslim policies. As a scholar of Muslim experiences with racism, I can say that the representation of Muslims in the media has historically been problematic, specifically after 9/11. And as someone who has written extensively about our counterterrorism laws and policies, the negative representations of Muslims as violent and a terrorist has resulted in the public supporting such laws and policies that have stripped away the civil liberties of not just Muslims, but also many other marginalized groups. In a few moments, Dr. Sohad Murrar, Assistant Professor of Psychology from the University of Illinois, Chicago, and ISPU scholar, will present the research study. After her presentation, I will invite our panelists, who are members of a new generation of actors, directors, and writers who are countering the negative stereotypes to bring us authentic and nuanced stories of Muslims in entertainment media. They will answer a few questions about their experiences in Hollywood. We are beyond thrilled to have an amazing panel today that includes Saagar Shaikh from Deli Boys, Yasmin Elhady from Muslim Matchmakers, Poppy Liu from the award-winning show Hacks, and Fawzia Mirza, director and writer of the movie Queen of My Dreams. I'm a huge super fan of all these people. So Dr. Murrar will also join this panel. But before we get into the presentation, I want to thank and introduce our incredible co-organizers for this event, Pillars Fund and the Muslim Public Affairs Council Hollywood Bureau. They will both say a few words in just a moment. It is important to credit these organizations for the work they have done to bring to the screen more nuanced and authentic representations of Muslims. Sue Obeidi is the director of MPAC's Hollywood Bureau. Since MPAC's Hollywood Bureau was launched in 2011, Sue has blended her love of faith with her love of film, television, and digital series to change and expand the narrative of Islam and Muslims in the entertainment industry. Arij Mikati, is the vice president of programs at Pillars Fund, where she designs and leads programming that challenges damaging narratives about Muslims and amplifies Muslim voices in artistic spaces. Her storytelling work seeks to change the lens through which Muslim stories are told to one that is dignified, complex, and tells the truth about Muslim communities. We are so indebted to both of them for all of their work that they have done in helping us organize this event today. So their full bios are in the chat, but right now I would like to welcome both Sue and Arish to say a few words.
Sue, take it away. Oh, okay. You're on mute, so I'm just going to go. Hi, everyone. It's so nice to see your names. I wish I could see your faces. I am in immense gratitude to our partners at ISPU for this research on such a timely and urgent topic. And I'm thrilled to be here with our friends at MPAC, whose contributions to this work have been so meaningful. I also want to shout out Doris Duke and Zeba, who I know put a lot of work into this research as well. And so I think this could not be coming at a better and more important time. I'm really, really happy that you've all joined us for this conversation. For those of you who may not know us, at Pillars, we work to amplify the leadership, narratives, and talents of Muslims in the United States. And our belief is simple. When Muslim communities are supported to tell their own stories, everyone benefits. In 2021, in partnership with Annenberg Inclusion Initiative and the Ford Foundation, we released a report that quantitatively, for the very first time, proved what Muslims had long known qualitatively to be true. The stories available to us on screen did not reflect the truth of our communities. But what that research also revealed was a profound opportunity, an opportunity to lift up the remarkable bench of Muslim storytellers who can tell the truth. There is such abundant talent in our communities, and to show that it simply does not have to be this way. What I love about ISPU's work today is that they didn't stop at asking what the numbers say. They asked, what does it mean? What does it mean for what people believe about Muslims, for what Muslims believe about themselves, for how our democracy functions, and even for how people vote? The data is clear. Stories matter. They shape perceptions, they ripple into policy, they touch real lives in tangible ways. And the case for investing in narratives that tell the truth has never been stronger. And at Pillars, we've also just announced the application opening for our third class of Pillars Artist Fellows, a program supporting emerging screenwriters and directors that work in and alongside Muslim communities with great promise. And as you listen today, I would love for you to make a mental note of storytellers you know that could add to this powerful mosaic of stories creating change and encourage them to apply. I am very energized because this research doesn't just diagnose a problem. It gives us insight into creative solutions. It invites us as a community to imagine what becomes possible when we flip the script together. And I can't wait to hear the reflections of our brilliant panelists and to explore with all of you what it looks like to build a media landscape where our stories are not only told, but told with honesty, dignity, and vision. And I'll hand it over to Sue. Thanks, everyone.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. May the peace and blessings of God be with you. On behalf of the board and staff of MPAC, I'd like to congratulate the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding on the completion and the launch of this comprehensive and, most importantly, timely report, whose findings support the need for positive Muslim representation on television, which is very much consistent with the mission of the MPAC Hollywood Bureau. We all know that culture moves public perceptions move public opinions, and public opinions impact policy change. And therefore, this work is all hands on deck kind of work. When it comes to entertainment media, Muslim advocacy groups have their roles, but the heavy lifting has always been done by Muslim creatives and executives who've been working for years and years to change things around for generations to come, and some of whom are on this panel today. Things do feel dire here and abroad, but please stay hopeful. We did not come this far just to get this far. The best is yet to come. Please join the MPAC Hollywood Bureau at Sundance, at the Sundance Film Festival on January 25th and 26th, also supported by the Doris Duke Foundation. We will have a representative of ISPU participate in one of our panels. But for now, I'd like to congratulate ISPU again, and we look forward to the conversation that is forthcoming. God bless. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you both to Sue and Arij, and I really just can't thank you all enough for the work that you're doing. You're providing my 18-year-old daughter with, content that I did not have growing up. It's quite amazing. Okay, so we're going to start with this presentation, and I promise after the presentation we will stop sharing slides. You will see our distinguished panelists, their faces up close and personal. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. Sohad, thank you. So I'm just going to describe ISPU for a few slides and then introduce some things about the study, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Murrar. So if you could go to the next slide. ISPU's mission is to provide objective research and education about American Muslims to support well-informed dialogue and decision-making. We envision an America where Muslims are thriving and equal. Next slide, please. ISPU provides objective research and education about American Muslims to support well-informed dialogue and decision-making. Next slide. Our research is rigorous, solution-seeking, Muslim community-focused, and connected to academic, national, and local networks. Our research focus areas are family and wellness, community, capacity building, American pluralism, and American Muslim contributions. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to provide a couple of examples of what we've done some studies on. We did a survey on Muslim voters in swing states before the 2024 presidential election. We have a study on health equity of Muslims in Southeast Michigan, and we even have one on Native American and Indigenous Muslims. We've conducted several American Muslim polls, and just to, give you all a heads up, in a few weeks we will be launching our next 2025 American Muslim poll where we'll have data on how Muslims are voting, what their policy priorities are, and their experiences with Islamophobia. So stay tuned for that as well. Next slide, please. So today we need to spend some time. ISPU would like to acknowledge our generous supporters whose contributions made this report possible, including our lead funder, Doris Duke Foundation, as well as the Tides Foundation and the Pop Culture Collaborative Fund, a sponsored project of Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors. Next slide, please. I have to introduce our amazing primary investigator for this study, Dr. Sohad Murrar, PhD, who is an assistant professor in the Department of Psychology at the University of Illinois, Chicago. She consults on the representation of social minority groups in films, television, educational materials, and works with educational institutions and companies to develop effective diversity and inclusion strategies using evidence-based approaches for social change. She has multiple journal articles published, and she will be presenting the data from this research in just a few minutes. Dr. Murrar's RAs for the study are Dr. Alina Saud and Dr. Zahra Mirnajafi. Next slide, please. And ISPU, all of our studies, we have a group of advisors, amazing advisors. And for this study, they were Drs. Noor Keteli, Muniba Salim, and Rebecca Littman, as well as Mariam Arshad and Maria Banji. We had a range of advisors from academics to people in the film and television industry to ensure we had a rigorous study. Finally, I just want to spend a moment to thank our team, Sarah Baker, ISPU's research project manager on the study, and Petra Al-Sufi, the senior outreach and partnerships manager, who did a lot of behind-the-scene work to get this project completed and the report published and this event organized. So I'm now going to turn it over to Dr. Murrar to go over the research.
Okay, thank you all. I want to start off by thanking ISPU and their endless support and patience with us and the research team who across 3 researchers, we managed to have 4 babies across the span of this project. So ISPU has been very patient and supportive of us to get this very critical work done. So let me just get started. Okay, so the nature of how entertainment media represents minorities is obviously very important. Americans watch between 32 and 34 hours of TV a week, according to Nielsen data. And for many people, their exposure to outgroups and minorities comes through media. So how are minorities actually being represented in entertainment media is a very important question. And the answer is a little harrowing. Media often distort demographics. Studies show persistent underrepresentation of minorities. For example, approximately 60% of primetime TV characters are male, while only 39% are female. Another example, Latinx characters make up less than 3% of the roles. And what's important here is that this is not kind of a nationally representative way of representing these minorities. Marginalized characters are also often stereotyped, which reinforces and perpetuates audiences' biases and the prejudices that we kind of are trying to combat. And this really, all of this comes at a cost to minorities. For example, entertainment media exposure to one's own racial or ethnic group has been shown to reduce a person's sense of identity, national identity, and a sense of self-esteem among minorities, based off of various studies. When it comes to Muslims in entertainment media, it's no surprise to anybody here today that they are often portrayed as villains in mainstream media, and often mainstream media and entertainment media depicts Muslim culture as very violent and repressive. But interestingly, there has been an increase of Muslim writers and creators, And so there is an increase in more positive and nuanced depictions of Muslims, some of whom folks are here today. But there is a dearth of experimental research that demonstrates causal effects of entertainment media on public attitudes and policy support. And more broadly speaking, the impact of entertainment media on support for diversity-related public policies is largely understudied. And so that really led to the current study, which sought to understand the impact of positive and negative portrayals of Muslims in entertainment television. And specifically, what we did was we examined the effects of exposure to depictions of Muslims in TV shows on people's support for policies that are broadly considered undemocratic or specifically anti-Muslim policies, as well as attitudes towards Muslims and perceptions of Muslims. Okay. What we did was we ran an online experiment with a nationally representative sample based on US Census data through a platform called Cloud Research Connect. And what we did was randomly assign people to watch either a positive or negative depiction of Muslims. And afterwards, they completed a questionnaire that includes a number of outcome measures related to policy support and intergroup attitudes, specifically toward Muslims. There are many details to the research methodology that if you want to get into the nitty-gritty details of, you can read the report or reach out to me, happy to talk. So we carefully chose 2 shows for our stimuli. These were arrived at through a pretty extensive coding process that we developed, in which we identified shows that depict Muslims, and then we coded them for valence, so whether they're positive, negative. We also looked at mixed and neutral representations within this coding scheme. And we did this across a number of common tropes, things related to how Muslims are portrayed violently, or how families are portrayed with various types of hierarchies, how gender is displayed, common tropes within these across these different valences. We pilot tested the shows to make sure that they were comparable on a number of relevant dimensions that are related to their entertainment value and the emotional response that they elicit. Both of these constructs could potentially influence our outcomes of interest. And so the goal of the pilot testing was to equalize these factors across our conditions so that what's driving the effects wouldn't be those factors. We also screened participants to make sure that they had not seen either of the shows beforehand, so people only qualified for the study if they had not seen the shows. What did we arrive at? An episode of 911 Lone Star was used for the positive depiction of Muslims. This particular episode featured a Muslim woman firefighter who helps save a man who's trapped in a grain silo and interacts with colleagues and community members to whom she ultimately ends up describing her connection to faith and her reasoning for wearing hijab. So this is the positive depiction. The negative depiction was an episode of Criminal Minds. And this particular episode focuses on a Muslim suspect who was portrayed as being resistant to an FBI profiler and trying to radicalize other prisoners towards militant jihad, very, very Muslim tropey. We also made sure that the episodes were similar in length, so they were 43 and 42 minutes respectively. Our outcomes, we had a number of outcomes that were related to policy, anti-Muslim policy support, anti-democratic policy support. We also measured a number of outcomes related to people's attitudes towards Muslims and as well as their perceptions towards Muslims. We will get into kind of the details of these as we go through the findings. So the findings, what actually are they? So when it comes to this question of how these positive or negative depictions impact people's support for various types of policies, whether they're anti-democratic and anti-Muslim, what do we find? Before we kind of jump into all of the results, I think it's worthwhile to orient you all to all of the graphs. So here on out, the light blue bars you see on the left-hand side are outcomes among those who watch the positive depiction, and the red bars you will see on the right-hand side are outcomes among those who watch the negative depictions. So what did we find? What we found was that those who watch the positive depiction of Muslims showed less support for anti-democratic policies. What do we mean by anti-democratic policies here? The measure itself asked participants to indicate their level of agreement or support for policies like requiring everyone to carry a national ID card at all times to show a police officer upon request, allowing the government to record telephone calls and monitor emails in order to prevent people from planning criminal activities or terrorist acts, for example. So broad anti-democratic policies that would impact everybody, not just Muslims. When it came to anti-Muslim policy support specifically, we found a similar outcome. Those who watched the positive depiction showed less support for anti-Muslim policies. These are policies like banning Muslim visas for those who want to enter the US, in having surveillance programs that target mosques in the US. So across kind of our two policy measures, the takeaway at this point is that those who watch the positive depiction of Muslims were more opposed to both anti-democratic and anti-Muslim policies. Okay, so what influence do these depictions have on people's attitudes and perceptions of Muslims? These are actually quite important factors for shaping our day-to-day interactions with Muslims. When it came to people's support for how they want Muslims to be treated, those who watched the positive depiction showed greater support to treating Muslims positively. So, for example, an item would be something like, I want to live in a country where Muslims are not targeted for their religious identity. So, more positive outcomes for those who watch the more positive depiction of Muslims. When it came to social distancing from Muslims, those who watched the positive depiction showed less of a desire to distance themselves from Muslims. For example, they were more receptive to having Muslims as neighbors, co-workers, romantic partners, etc. When it comes to how warmly or coldly people feel towards Muslims after watching the shows, this is a very common measure of people's prejudices. It's favorable or unfavorable, warm or cold. Those who watched the positive depiction showed greater warmth towards Muslims than those who watched the negative depiction. When it came to this concept of intergroup anxiety, this is the level of anxiety people feel in anticipation or during interactions with an outgroup member, in this case specifically Muslims. We didn't really observe meaningful or statistically significant differences between conditions here. We can get into details about that later. When it came to the construct of symbolic threat is basically the extent to which people feel that American values, American norms, the cultural principles of what it means to be American are being threatened by the presence of Muslims. What we see is that those who watch the positive depiction perceived less symbolic threat from Muslims than those who watch the negative depiction. Next, we have identification with Muslims. This is the extent to which people can relate to Muslims, the extent to which they feel similar to them, that they like them. And what we see is that those who watch the positive depiction showed greater identification with Muslims than those who watch the negative depiction. And actually, in some of my previous work, I've shown that identification with Muslims as a result of the media that you're exposed to is a critical underlying process that drives a reduction in bias towards Muslims. So we're kind of targeting these underlying psychological processes through this exposure that they're getting. That's really, really critical for reducing biases and prejudice. Finally, I want to point out that in addition to intergroup anxiety, there were several outcomes we didn't observe statistically meaningful differences between conditions on. This is to be expected in kind of these large-scale studies and can be due to a variety of reasons, but I'd still like to highlight them. So what we're seeing here is, so ISPU has their established measure called the Islamophobia Index. This is usually included in their annual reports. In our study, we actually don't observe meaningful differences between those who watch the positive and negative depiction on this particular measure, though other measures indicate variation on anti-Muslim or pro-Muslim attitudes. Similarly, we don't find that watching the positive or negative depiction of Muslim impacts support for a broader diversity in society. So this was not specific to Muslims. This diversity wasn't linked to Muslims. We were just trying to gauge whether this exposure to a positive Muslim or negative Muslim depiction impacts how people feel about diversity more broadly. We don't really observe statistical differences there. We also didn't observe differences in the extent to which people express what's dubbed passionate hate towards Muslims around across conditions. This was a pretty extreme measure, I'll say, getting at things like how much anger or contempt people feel towards Muslims. So it makes sense that people aren't going to express that much variation in general. We have what we would call floor effects here. That is, they're very low scores in general across the conditions, and so it's hard to observe meaningful variation across the conditions. Finally, we do not see that either type of depiction changed how homogenous or monolithic Muslims are perceived to be as a result of watching either of these depictions. Okay, so I just threw a lot of results at you all, and I think the question is, what do you walk away with? The main takeaway from the results I just presented after the policy results is that those who watched the positive depiction of Muslims had, broadly speaking, more positive feelings, thoughts, and beliefs about Muslims than those who had seen the negative depiction. And to kind of just start wrapping everything up, the overall findings when we consider everything together show that positive portrayals can lead to better intergroup attitudes and less support for policies that harm minority groups. And we know that Muslims are a highly targeted group in the US, arguably the most targeted group globally for discrimination and society more broadly. And so it's important to think of ways that we can actually go and create more positive and nuanced depictions of Muslims in order to improve attitudes and behaviors towards them and impact policy that impacts them. Another point I want to make is that representation quality matters. It's not just about getting minorities on the screen or getting Muslims on the screen, but being mindful of how they're being presented. In order to do this, I think it's very important to collaborate with people who study media effects to design storylines that help improve intergroup relations or at least don't actively harm them, especially since sometimes based on intuitions, people make decisions to represent minorities in ways they think will help improve how others view those minority groups. But when we look into research, at least in psychology, you're likely to find the opposite is true sometimes. I'll give you an example. A common approach to challenging stereotypes of minorities is depicting characters in very counter-stereotypical ways. But if the characters are depicted as highly counter-stereotypical or too counter-stereotypical, the audience is likely to see them as an exception to the rule, a process we refer to as subtyping in psychology, and their attitudes towards those characters may be positive, but they won't hold any bearing on their attitudes towards the larger group. And so there won't be kind of this generalizing process from the characters that they're observing and developing these mediated relationships with to the outgroup. And instead, we might want to strike a balance and have maybe a certain degree of counter-stereotypical representation. This is just one example of the things that maybe intuitively people want to do to represent and combat the prejudices and the biases that exist, but you kind of have to be a little more nuanced with the nature of how it happens. It's also important to explore the effects of narratives and to do so across genres and to make this a common practice to basically kind of test out a narrative with a smaller group of people before it hits the big screen if possible. In a sense, it can be kind of part of audience testing with a mindfulness towards the psychological, the social, the political ramifications of how minorities and dominant groups are depicted. And finally, I think it's important to examine the long-term effects of media, especially given that people tend to consume narratives in serial forms across time. So yeah, I think those are the broad points, and I think that's where I'll leave things to start the conversation with the panelists. Shall I give it back to you, Sahad, to get
Yes, thank you so much. This was incredible. And I just want to highlight to everybody, as somebody who's been in the academy for a long time and had to rely on any study on the representation of Muslims, how important this study is, that what Dr. Murrar has found is not just that the representations that we have negative representations. What she's showing is that look at the impact that a negative versus a positive representation has on, particularly in this moment where we are, where we're seeing so many laws and policies that are anti-democratic being put into place currently. So thank you so much for this research. You just have to go help me with 2 more slides. If you go back 1 slide, just this is a QR code. Please use it. We will put links in the chat for you. This connects you to the study. This connects you to all of our other studies. ISPU has a wealth of research, which is really meant to help combat a lot of the stereotypes that we see of Muslims in the United States. And then the last one, if you could just, and then here are all of our social media handles. So you can follow us on Facebook, X, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And definitely if you want to look at our website as well. So thank you so much, Dr. Moran. I'll welcome you back in just a second. We are going, if you could stop sharing, that would be great. So we can see, are you still sharing? Nope, you're stop sharing. Okay, great. So now we're in the, so it is my huge honor and pleasure to invite now the distinguished panelists who we have for this webinar. I'm a big fan of all of theirs. So this is a really cool group of people that we brought together. And I just want to say that the research that I got to do for this webinar was very fun. I watched all of your interviews that I found online and really got to know all of you through watching you do these interviews with other people. So it was really cool. This has been a really fun project for me to be a part of. So one quick thing, please use the Q&A chat if you have questions. We will be using that for audience questions, but I'm first going to introduce everybody. First, we have Saagar Shaikh, who is a Pakistani-American actor and improviser based in Los Angeles. Saagar is the star of the Hulu comedy Deli Boys, for which he was nominated for Outstanding Lead Performance in a Comedy Series at the 2025 Gotham Awards. Saagar is also known for playing Amir Khan in the Marvel Disney limited series Miss Marvel, and makes an appearance in The Marvels. Next, we have Yasmin Elhady, is a comedian, attorney, and host of Hulu's Muslim Matchmaker, where she connects hearts with humor and heart. Born in Egypt and raised in Alabama, Yasmin blends her professional world with her comedic voice to challenge stereotypes, amplify underrepresented voices, and foster empathy. A passionate advocate for refugees and women's rights, her comedy explores the intersections of faith, culture, motherhood, and identity, offering a unique and powerful lens on today's most pressing issues. Poppy Liu is a Chinese-American actress known for her roles in Hacks, Sunnyside, iCarly, Dead Ringers, and Netflix's No Good Deed. As a first-generation immigrant raised between Xi'an, Minnesota, Shanghai, Poppy brings a deeply intersectional perspective to both her creative and advocacy work. Her work has earned her recognition on the Advocates People of the Year list, Out Magazine's Out 100, and as an HBO APA Visionaries Ambassador. Welcome, Poppy. And Fawzia Mirza is a White House champion of change, an alum of the Tribeca Film Institute and Ryan Murphy's Half Initiative directing program, an Islamic Scholarship Fund winner, and her feature script Heirloom was named to the 2022 Muslim list published by the Blacklist. Her directorial feature debut, The Queen of My Dreams, was shot in Canada and Pakistan about a mother-daughter dramedy that stars Amrit Kaur from Sex Lives of College Girls, Nimra Buka, Ms. Marvel, and Hamza Haq from Transplant. And then also we have our primary investigator, Sohad Murrar, who will be on this panel right now. So their full bios, I had to condense them for in the interest of time, but their full bios are all in the chat. You can read much more about them. I'm very excited to have you all here. And my first question is actually going to go to Saagar, if that's okay. I My husband and I binged Deli Boys, and I have to say, I watch TV without knowing what I'm getting into. And the first episode, I was like, whoa, what is happening here? It was like nothing I'd ever seen, starring South Asian Muslim men. And we binged it in a couple of nights. It was so good. And you both are amazing in it. And so I guess. I want to ask you, it's a really incredible because you are playing someone who is breaking the rules and is breaking the law, but you're not a terrorist in this. Like I've been raised with the terrorist trope. And I wonder if you could speak to the importance of roles like yours and if you see Hollywood evolving, are you seeing a shift in the types of roles you're being asked to play today?
Yeah, when I read that script, I was I was just like, wow, I've never read a script like this before that portrays like flawed Muslim people, but they're not like the bad guys. They're bad people, but they're not the bad guys, right? Um, when I got Miss Marvel, I was very excited about that. And it was a great job. It was amazing. And it was like the, positive representation that we needed. But I was worried that we're gonna go from like one extreme of like showing us as terrorists and everything we watch to another extreme as far as male Muslim characters go, where it's you're either a religious fanatic that's a terrorist, or you're like a super religious guy who is just like a good guy but just religious, right? I dreamed of a day where I could play like a normal human being, you know, like where, he is Muslim, but religion is not a part of the story or a part of what drives the character to do what he does or the decisions that he makes. So I was really glad that, I could be a part of Deli Boys that, I feel like that's just it's a tide. It's a turning of the tide for Muslim representation. Um, I don't remember the question. Sorry.
It's okay. I just wonder, like, your experience in this field of, being an actor and being in television. And yeah, you're talking about how I think that was something that struck me. It's like this is a comedy about these two brothers taking over not knowing that their father was, in this drug world and taking this
Yeah.
over. And it just really provides a different, a sort of a different storyline for somebody who is Muslim. You don't have to be the terrorist and you don't have to be very religious and you don't have to be,
Right.
so, what's your experience been before this? Was this something that, you're seeing more of, or, is this, how are you seeing the landscape now? I look at this as the next generation of shows and film that we're seeing with Miss Marvel and whatnot. But
Totally. Like, and I think like we have our like predecessors to thank because I think like Hassan Minhaj and Rami and Mo and there's a long list of others. They did the work of they did the hard work of kind of taking all those meetings, getting in those rooms, and then making these projects that are by us for everyone. Um, and I think like we're seeing a shift in the industry where I am getting a lot more auditions now for things that I would have never read for before. Before I did Miss Marvel, I want to say like at least 80% of my auditions or emails for auditions were for like terrorist roles. And I declined every single one. I declined even jobs that weren't terrorist roles, but like cab drivers or just something stereotypical because I felt like the industry just wants to keep us back there. They don't they don't want us to grow with the world, or they don't want it to seem like we are growing with the world. So they will do whatever. And I think this all has to do with Zionism, by the way. I can get into this, deeper, but um, and like, it's kind of a snake eating its own tail, right? Zionism wants to hold us back, and they kind of have a lot of hands in the industry, and um, they make a lot of decisions, and they keep us back. And then the viewers in the US see it and think that this is how we are because it's on TV. What we should believe it, right? Um, I mean, Trump just said something in his speech the other day about like Portland and how, but it looks really bad on TV, what they're showing us on TV. So I mean, I'm definitely rambling here, but
Yeah,
I want to say it's gotten a lot better over the last couple of years, and I'm lucky to be a part of this new wave or graduating class or whatever we want to call it. But I think that it's just beginning, and there is still a lot of work to go because the world is doing its thing globally right now, where it's trying to, villainize us all over again. And I don't think this time it's going to work as well as it has historically. Um, but yeah, I think the people can see through all the lies now.
yeah. Well, thank you for rejecting those terrorist roles, and sticking with it and being in a show. It's the shows and Miss Marvel. I mean, really, you really are. I mean, I mean this it is amazing for the next generation to have these and what you all will do for the future generations of actors and directors. I'm going to turn over to Yasmin now, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yasmin. I am so thrilled to meet you. I actually came across your show because I was getting all these texts from my non-Muslim friends. Have you seen Muslim Matchmaker yet? And I was like, well, if they're the ones texting me, then, you've clearly, reached a very large audience. So my best friend was in town and we binged it in one day. We sat on the couch on a Saturday.
Yes.
We watched it. Amazing. And I'm actually going to Texas tomorrow and I'm going to watch it with my mom again. So,
Amazing.
I wanted to ask you kind of, along the same lines as what I just asked Sagar is, how are you able to make a show about Muslims and dating and reach a non-Muslim audience that maintains authenticity and speaks to the diversity of the Muslim community?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for what ISPU is doing that no one else has the fortitude and the expertise to do. So I am so thrilled to be here, and it's amazing to see how important the representation, like you said, the type of representation, the accurate representation, how it changes people's views, and how powerful it is, even from just a set of questions from watching one episode. Imagine being barraged by the same tropes and the same terrible imagery. I'm sure there's other data that shows just how much of that is out there compared to these positive, depictions of just humanizing Muslims. So honestly, the show would have never happened in this way, where it's authentic to an Islamic Muslim lived experience, and also appealing to non-Muslims, if we didn't have those two views and those two lenses in the making of the show. So we have the benefit and the real honor of working with people like our executive producers, Smriti Mundra and Sinan Keshke, who are coming at it from a non-Muslim lens, and someone who really is from the Indian matchmaking and a Hindu background, and then someone who's coming from other types of docs and news media and journalism like Sinan. And these two lenses are very important in making sure that our show blended a lot of, I think, the kinds of stories that people wanted to see when they think about Muslims. And whether that be, just eye-opening, expansive understandings of what we could be, and also authentic real life depictions on something that you're calling, unscripted reality TV. And it could have been very easy to make a very trashy show There's lots of really trashy reality TV out there. I will throw no stones, but there's lots of it, and people love it. They consume it. They eat it up. They just like, yummy, tasty, tastes great, and they watch it. Sort of like watching a train wreck, and you can't keep your eyes off of it. To make a show that is in integrity is very difficult. It is very difficult. And we hope obviously that it finds its audience. We hope that people enjoy the show. So I think it's a testament to the fact that these are real stories that people connect to. And that I believe so had you talked about in this, it's about like the relatability, right? Like, can I relate to what I'm seeing? That is like an underlying and an underpinning factor in changing every other perception. It's like that's the key, that's the crown jewel. And what's so cool about this show, I think, because it's depicting the search for love, is that is like the most universal quest. We are all trying to be loved. We are all trying to be loved. We are all trying to navigate our families, feelings about it, whether you're Muslim or non-Muslim. We're all trying to figure out what our friends think about it. And we're trying to see if a person will actually be able to see us and bear witness and testimony to our lives. Like, it's such a deeply important part of the human experience. So I think that's why we were able to make a show like this. Our creators, the people behind it, the stories, the ability to create trust as well. I mean, we had a lot of trust on set because these are people's lives and they're like searching for love. And it's hard, because people are going to do some crazy things. They're going to do things that push you, that you're like, don't do that. And you have to figure out, like, how do I protect this person and also create a story and an image that actually depicts the reality of what's going on. So I believe that it was a testament to everybody on set really making people feel comfortable and trusted, and our leadership in the executive producers really wanting to tell a beautiful, human, dynamic, and joyful story.
Yeah, you're kind of bringing up some very important points, which is one, there's an appetite for it. Something that I think is very important, that people want to see this. So, that's why we have a show like Muslim Matchmaker that's everybody's, watching it and feeling connected to these, like you said, it's a vulnerable story, but also just, if you could just speak just for a second about the importance of who's, like you're saying, who's writing the script, who's behind it. So just, you know,
Yes. And in our case, obviously it's an unscripted show, so it's not like we don't have a team of writers. We have a team of cast members. We have people who are trusting us with their stories. And then we have people who are our directors, our producers, who are thinking, how do I weave this story and how do I tell this story in a way that captures what's going on and gives people an insight into someone's heart, like all the anxiety, all the hurt, all the fear, all of our expectations when it comes to searching for someone to love, including like the things that nag at us. Like, a lot of us, we're dealing with heartbreak. It's like we're following patterns that lead to that heartbreak. And so the show is really about self-knowledge and trusting yourself again after maybe many, many times of following the same pattern. Like, okay, I'm gonna try something new. I'm gonna try a matchmaker. Like, okay, fine. Like, I'll let you take the reins here and put me on a date that's kind of feels like a blind date, because what I'm doing is not working. And I think people can really like connect with that, like, oh shoot, like, yeah, like I'm a mess, and it's okay to be a little bit messy, but in a way that has integrity, I think, and still protects people. And that's a balance. I'm very, very grateful to be a part of a show like that had people behind the scenes that cared very deeply about the people on screen.
yeah. Thank you so much. I mean, I love the show, and there'll be more questions as we go on. But I'm gonna shift for a second, and Poppy, I'm gonna bring you on now and ask you a question that kind of ties a little bit more to the study that we just saw. So, Hacks continues to win awards. Saw an amazing speech by, at the Emmys, for being an outstanding comedy, and really hones in on the ways that Gen Z and boomers can relate. Your performance as Kiki is just wonderful in it. And I just wanted to turn a little bit and ask you about how you use your public profile to advocate for issues that you care about. Recently, I've seen more celebrities come out and be more vocal on Palestine. And for you, how has being outspoken about Palestine impacted, your experiences in Hollywood? And, especially in light of what we just saw with Jimmy Kimmel, speaking out not about Palestine, but talking about Charlie Kirk, for example. So just curious if you could speak a little bit about that right now.
Definitely. Thanks for having me. First of all, I just want to share that I am a new Muslim. September 6th was my 1 year anniversary of taking the Shahada, which actually Arish did my ceremony, and it was really special. My friend Faria witnessed, and then my friend Aboud from Gaza video called in to also witness. So honored to be here. Thank you for having me. Sorry if you hear my toddler in the background. I'm a single mom, and it's just the vibe right now. But yeah, in terms of Palestine and talking about the genocide in Gaza, it's so interesting because we're in such a different this is real life right now.
We are here for your
this is pull back the curtain of Hollywood. And it's just my Shih Tzu's here, my kids here. So I feel like the repercussions for speaking out about the genocide 2 years ago, right after it happened, are so different than even right now. I remember when I first started, and the thing is, like, I've been really open about my own learning curve too. Oh, Benny's asking, Arish, can you come on camera too? Benny wants to see you. And sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah, I've been really open, I think, about my own learning curve around Palestine. Like, I feel like I vaguely knew, like, I knew Free Palestine and was like, yes. And also, I don't think I knew all the history of it. I didn't know about like the Nakba. I didn't know sort of like the many, many years of like how the occupation like evolved and changed. I just like, I went on a big deep dive learning curve, and I do feel like that's been really important, especially I feel like for celebrities and people with a big platform, that like people are doing behind the scenes like research and learning too, and like sharing their own journeys. So anyways, at that time though, like I burned so many bridges. I like at the time I kept saying I have basically like killed every cast group chat that I've been in because I was asking everyone to sign Artists for Ceasefire. And I think you would be really surprised by the number of people that not just said no, just like didn't never responded. And many of those people have come around now, which is great. And also like, the stakes are just really different now versus than before. Sorry.
We are here for this, just please don't share this image. Poppy has asked that, in protecting her and her son's privacy. We just
Yeah, thank you
reiterate
all.
that.
I trust this. Mama, we'll get gummy bears right afterwards. You've been really good. I'll get you gummy bears right after. Here, I'm gonna give you the excavator. We're really into excavators right now. This is anyways. Yeah, and so I would definitely was concerned about like how it would impact my career at the time. And also it didn't feel like there was any other option to take, because I think first and foremost, prior to working in Hollywood, I'm like an artist before that and a human being before that. And not only as like a human being and like needing to care about this on a human level, but also like I am an artist because like to not speak on this would be so, I'm sorry, this is crazy. Okay, hang on, I'm gonna try something else, but I'm still here. Anyways, I feel like the stakes are different and more people are showing up, and I know that it's part of movement work that like the tide changes, the needle shifts at some point, like, we pass the Overton window and it becomes really normalized, and that's great. And also like, I think like people that are showing up now, like I think it would be really impactful if they also shared what their learning curve was, why they didn't show up in the beginning. And also like what got them there eventually. with the Jimmy Kimmel of it all and stuff, like, yeah, it is scary to see the like the extent to which fascism right now is taking place, that like even the protected rich white man is like now being impacted too. Like that is scary on in terms of like a fascism scale level. And also it's been interesting to see people that were completely silent previously that like now like this is their bar. This is the line that like could not be crossed. Now it's impacting like Jimmy Kimmel, like that's the red line, which is wild because I feel like, in my mind, the red line was crossed so long ago. So yeah, I've also forgotten what the question is,
Oh,
but
you're answering it, and thank you so much. And I feel like this is the thank you, because when you speak out, especially in the beginning, even if it took this long for other people to speak out, then it takes away that normalization of justifying a genocide, so or being silent on a genocide. This is important.
oh, something I remembered too is that like in terms of like career impact, it like did and it didn't. On the one hand, it was like I have still worked a lot since like, the genocide started, and I've continually been outspoken. And also like I have lost a big job, and on like sort of like an emotional spiritual level, I'm like rejection is protection, that wasn't meant for me. It's better that like I know their true colors, and like I'm clear about who I am, and that's not who I want to be in business with. And it also opened up the doors for all the right work collaborations to happen. But also interestingly, I feel like the other thing that's happening now that more people are showing up and like speaking out for the first time is that like they are like people that were silent to me before are now coming around just on a personal level. I was just at like the I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
That's amazing. I know this is amazing. I so appreciate, and that the work is still there, and kind of going to Sagar's point that he is not accepting certain roles, and that that people are sticking to their values and being able to do so, and totally agree that you know Muslims have been silenced for a very long time, in what we can and cannot say without experiencing repercussions. I'm going to move to Fawzia quickly so we have some time for answers. Thank you, Poppy, and congratulations on taking your Shahada. Fawzia, it's so wonderful to have you here. You have an impressive record as director and writer, from Signature Moves to Deli Boys to Queen of My Dreams. And, hopefully everybody reads your extensive bio in the chat. But I wanted to ask you, as a director and writer, if you could talk about, what it's been like for you to have more diverse representations that include Muslims, BIPOC writers and directors, especially as we see this connection between Muslim portrayal and policy. So what have you been experiencing? What are some wins, challenges that you faced in your career so far?
I mean, I think like just to sort of step back a little bit, for me, I entered this business as an actor, and, as an actor who was, sort of coming out as queer. So, that added identity of being Muslim, queer, South Asian, so not white, and then also socialized as a woman. What I found as an actor was like there were no roles for me at all. Um, eh, of one of those identities, much less any actual representation that felt authentic of all of them. And so I started writing those roles. And the thing, because I come from comedy, I did improv in Chicago, like that, I come from the theater scene in Chicago, that for me, comedy and identity sort of, I almost like walked backwards into the representation of it all. And part of it was, one, I didn't see any representation, much less joyous representation, because I was very much asking myself, how am I going to be who I am if I am all of these things when I don't see it at all? And not just be represented, but stay alive and feel joy and fall in love and feel as though this world is also made for me. And so I started writing those. And because I come from a comedy background, comedy was deeply at the center of those stories. And I do find that both of those things, whether it's joyous representation and comedic representation, um, does not usually and is not usually given the weight, the power, or the privilege of dramatic representation. So comedy is also, the power of it is so important to being able to talk about really tough conversations, have challenging conversations, but also to show humans at sometimes their best or their worst, but in a way that is accessible. And when I talk about comedy, I'm never talking about comedy that's at the expense of someone's humanity, never punching down. It's always sort of taking into consideration our humanity and us as people, and like laughing together at the circumstances or our choices in a certain set of circumstances. So I do feel as though my mission, very much entering Hollywood, I moved here in 2018 to write for a limited series on CBS called The Red Line. And, there was a queer Muslim South Asian character in that show. And I feel like I was sort of the representation for that character. But moving into Hollywood, it became very apparent that Hollywood presented another challenge, because Hollywood wasn't really telling Muslim stories, um, much less queer Muslim stories. So here I am and have been fighting for this queer Muslim representation. But I can tell you a story of, I had a show I was pitching with an incredible team, and like somebody who had a deal at Netflix, and it was like all the executives, I think this was 2019, they were crying. They were like, this is the best pitch we've ever seen. And it was a pitch based off a novel, a successful book, an IP, with a queer Muslim woman at the center, and this incredible mother, like a high school story, and then an incredible reconciliation with the mother, through the 4 seasons. But the feedback that was given was that, well, we haven't told a Muslim mainstream story really well, and so I don't even know if we're able yet to tell this story. And so when I think about representation, like it's flawed in many ways. And I can tell you, like, I know the terrorist trope, but I've never written that. And I would say that as a queer person, we have to create our own liberation, because no one's doing it for us, And so when I think about those stories, I do think comedy is revolutionary. I do think, rom-coms are essential. I do think we have to think about genre, and just thinking about you know, um, some of the research that we were looking at earlier. It's like genres and positive portrayals. Like, to me, that is that is the baseline. Everyone else is going to write and make the shows and stories about us where we die, where we forget about terrorists. We just don't get to live. And so we have to decide to tell the stories that allow us to be beautiful, sexy, fun. I mean, I've been thinking a lot about how I just want Muslims to be seen as fun. Why aren't we fun and sexy? Like, our culture, our historic culture across the globe is so rich. There's almost 2 billion of us now. We have so many cultures and countries and races and nationalities and languages, and we're not seen as sexy. And so that's something I think a lot about. I want Muslims to be sexy. And, you can take sexy and break it down to, it's a spectrum, right? And so, every panelist here is sexy. Everyone doing this research is sexy, right? And so it's that. It's not just like, representation is not liberation. It's so representation at this point, to me, is down here. It's not even on the screen anymore. We have to be doing so much more. And, to echo these sentiments of, like, we're fighting for Palestine and we're fighting for liberation for all. That also must be something we're fighting for within Muslim community. We cannot fight for liberation out there for everyone else. And then when it comes to Muslim communities, say, yeah, but not you guys. You guys need to we're not ready yet. We're not there yet. We're not ready to talk about queer and trans people yet. I would say that the more that we sort of elevate our own people, the bigger ummah, the louder voice, the more powerful we can be uh, globally for us all.
Thank you so much, Fawzia. I mean, you are absolutely right. We cannot have baseline representation. That is not liberation. We have to be inclusive of everybody. And I think I might just steal your tagline about everybody being sexy. Thank you.
Please, please do it.
It's amazing. And we are fun. I think this is the funnest group I've been around at a webinar. So I have one more question. It's going to be for Sohad. Thank you for that. And then we want to give the audience some time for questions. So apologies that this is so quick. But okay, Sohad, you just presented your research. I've read your report. We've been in conversation many times. What happens when we have these representations to the way that, like, we're talking about the general public? What do you think this does to the general public's perception on anti-democratic policies and anti-Muslim policies?
Yeah. I think it's really important to recognize and not take for granted that a lot of people have never actually even met a Muslim or those who are racialized as Muslims. That most people, at least in the US, outside of major cities, have never interacted with a Muslim, and even those within major cities, maybe not consciously interacting with Muslims, despite the fact that we are such a large proportion of the world's population. Why am I saying this? Because most people's interactions with Muslims comes through this kind of mediated format of entertainment and or news media, unfortunately. And so the nature of how we are being represented on the screen is really, really critical because especially within entertainment media, there's this element of people come to entertainment media not with the idea of like, oh, I'm going to hear a bunch of information about groups and what's happening and whatever. So people's guards are automatically down, and so there's really an opportunity to present different groups in ways that people can kind of digest and relate to. This is very different than how somebody approaches news media, for example, where they know that they're going to get messaging about what's happening and that there's some leaning to one direction or another. That's not necessarily how people come to the screen or their tablets or whatever it is to consume entertainment media. So there's an opportunity then to depict messages and information that people are automatically more receptive to because they're not anticipating that they're getting information about social groups, that they're being told like, hey, here's this group of people and here's actually what we should know about them. So that's really, really important. Not taking for granted that this is the way that most people actually interact with Muslims. They develop relationships with Muslims through the characters that are being put out there. That's incredibly powerful. I also think that it's very powerful when the characters are being depicted in ways that are realistic and they're more nuanced, right? It's not about just presenting Muslims as, these beacons of perfection, but instead as these flawed characters who are very easy to relate to. That relatability is really, really essential for people to actually feel receptive to folks and to assuage some of the fears that have been fostered so deeply through our entertainment media and through our news media. And I think that the study itself, it speaks for itself. I mean, the study occurred against the backdrop of the genocide that's taking place, right? It's against the backdrop of persistent and consistent negative representation of Muslims and those racialized as Muslims in news media. So to have any type of positive effect, even with a singular exposure to a 42-minute or 43-minute episode of something, is pretty profound. And you can imagine that outside of the vacuum that is this crazy world where people are constantly being bombarded with messages, that those effects would probably even be stronger. Also, in some of my previous work, I systematically evaluated the effect of Zarqa Nawaz's Little Mosque on the Prairie. It was the sitcom that came out of CBC from Canada, and it depicted a show that the characters were kind of going about their day-to-day lives there as well. They were Muslims in a community that had both Muslims and non-Muslims, and it was just, they were very simple characters, relatable, flawed, whatever. Also had very positive effects. It was a little funnier on the compared to Lone Star 911 and Criminal Minds, but I think that there's a lot that's happening behind the scenes for people psychologically when they are consuming these media. And it's really, really encouraging that there are so many diverse Muslim folks getting involved in the creation of our entertainment media and what we're consuming. I think there is the big question that I'm always thinking about is like, even if we can create the media that improves people's attitudes and behaviors towards Muslims, impacts how they view anti-Muslim policies, how do we actually get people to consume that media is another question that I think I maybe have for the other panelists, because it's something I think about a lot. Like, if this works, how do we actually get the people who need it the most to consume it? Because oftentimes we end up creating or we end up consuming the media that attracts us. It's our in-group, right? Like, I just, by rule of thumb for me, is like, oh, I'm going to consume this because I know there were Muslim creatives a part of this process here, so I'm just going to consume this. I'm not the prejudiced Muslim, I'm not like the anti-Muslim person though. How do we reach those people? And I'm curious how the creatives think about this question.
Yeah, why don't we start with that then? Because we are going to have audience questions. I have a couple that I've had help selecting. So who wants to take that question? I mean, like I said, Deli Boys and Muslim Matchmaker came to me from non-Muslims. They were like, "Sir, you need to watch this." So how do you get, so we're not an insular group just watching about, being happy. We're happy we get to see Muslim content, but that message gets out to non-Muslim, a non-Muslim audience. So not sure who wants to jump in and take that question, but I'm happy to throw it to somebody. Yasmin, I can kind of see you sort of maybe saying something.
No, I'm just I'm smiling because that's the $1 million question. I mean, there's two parts to that. One is we have to create content, like borrowing from Fawzia, that is sexy and fun. And a part of being sexy and fun is like being interesting, and like we have to believe that we are. So that's part of it. And then we have to convince other people that we're safe enough to watch it. So like I was back and forth about whether I should say this or not, but we did not get renewed for a second season. And I think a big part of the reason that we didn't get renewed for a second season, we did not reach enough non-Muslim audiences. It could have been just the word Muslim in our title. I think we made a show that was like really great and really fun, but maybe it wasn't sexy enough, right? Because in that space and dating shows, they are a lot more, I will say, like, sexualized than our show, which is a little bit wholesome. It's like a joyful show. It's even a show you could watch with young people. And I think that was very intentional. But I guess what I'm saying is that like we have to crack that nut. Like we have to figure out how we make content that finds its audience. And it could just be marketing, because if our work is good, like if you make art that survives your own, like, you have to be proud of your work. You have to actually be proud of what you're creating. And it's something that maybe you would want to watch again, like survives your own, I don't know, like metric of, because someone asked, another person asked, like, what is success? I think success is making art that you're proud of. That's, for me, that is actually what success is. And it's something that like you can pull out of yourself. But we got to figure out this marketing issue, Sahar, because if we don't, we lose shows. And our show is a Muslim female led show, and there are not a lot of those. And maybe We Are Lady Parts. Of course, Fawzia is making film. I'd love for her to make TV if she's interested. That would be good. We need more female-led content, but if we can't get people to watch it, we're in trouble. And that might be a marketing thing. That might be our storylines. That might be that we're not reaching the right audiences, or making alliances with people that would normally just click away from anything that looks too Muslim-y. So maybe we Trojan horse it. I don't know, but that's a conversation that we have to keep having. And I would love ISPU to do data on this, like what drives people to watch things, what makes them curious about watching things that involve Muslim cast members, but makes it approachable and accessible.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's
it's
a
to
great
avoid
point.
anything that is out, overtly Muslim. But I think like if you can do data analysis on that, then now we're talking, because then we can make stories that make people interested enough and curious enough that they're open to our stories and our
Yeah,
narrative. Yeah.
thank you. And I'm devastated that you just told me that there wasn't a second season coming. I'm
Girl, I'm
devastated.
more devastated because I hate my job. Yeah. Yeah.
And it just goes to show it's not just the writers and directors and actors. There's a whole industry that we need people to advocate for these shows and these different representations. I'm going to turn for a second to some of the questions. We are going to end on time, so we won't get through all the questions. Apologies to the audience, but this is a question, that I've heard some of you get asked actually in other panels that you've been on. But, as an aspiring screenwriter, the question comes from somebody who says their fear is backlash from the Muslim community about my imperfect Muslim characters. Do any of you have advice about this? What are your thoughts on the criticism that comes from within Muslim community via the Haram police? Also, Muslims consume a lot of media but hesitate to work in media. So what do you all think about support from the Muslim community? So now you're talking about, Yasmin, we need the non-Muslim community to buy in. But what happens when the Muslim community is sitting there and saying, well, we don't buy in because of these representations? So I don't know who might want to take that. I'm kind of thinking, Sagar, do you want to respond to that
Yeah,
question?
I want to start by saying it be your own people sometimes, and what I think what like people aren't understanding even inside the community is that we are not a monolith. There are so many different kinds of us, from race. There's just a scale, right? And I got a lot of hate from like all the hate that I got from Deli Boys was all from other Muslim people. Like he's not a real Muslim. He's wearing a Allah chain while he's doing drugs. I know people like that personally, right? And like they still go to Jummah, whatever it is. I don't think people are looking at the bigger picture here in the industry. They'll complain about the lack of representation, but they want it to be precisely representative of them. And nobody is ever going to get that. So, and another thing is like the first like 4 to 6 weeks of streaming like really, really, really matter. So whenever we have shows or projects or whatever that comes out, we need to urge people to, instead of saying like, oh yeah, it's on my list, there is an urgency here, right? And when a show doesn't get picked up, they are the ones that are most upset. Like, oh man, oh, that sucks. There have been so many people that have come up to me and asked me if we're getting a season 2. Are you guys getting a season 2? And it took about 6 months for them to give us a season 2 because the numbers weren't amazing, apparently. We don't know. They don't tell us. And then I'll ask those people, the same people that are asking me about season 2, oh, what was your favorite episode in season 1? And they're like, oh, I haven't seen it yet. Why are you asking me about a season 2 if you haven't even seen the first season? It is people like you that are the reason that we may not be getting a second season, right? I don't think they understand the urgency. And even if they do, they'll watch it. They won't like one thing about the representation and they'll turn it off. And that is like, I think, very narrow-minded. And if you want to see something that feels representative to you, make it, write it. They're the people that they're not even in this industry that complain the most. And they don't know how hard it is to get something made. Sometimes it takes, I know Abdullah wrote Deli Boys in 2019. We shot episode 1 in 2022. We shot the rest of it in 2024 and it came out in 2025. That's 6 years that he started working on this just for somebody who doesn't feel like it represents them to go on Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb and write a bad review about it. You know, it's shows like Miss Marvel and Deli Boys that are helping open the doors for future projects. But if you shit on these projects right now, if you don't support it, the projects that you would support are never going to get made.
Absolutely. Fawzia, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, just from like a creative perspective, like if you're a writer and you're like, I want to write something that gets made, like that is a fallacy right away, because unless you are the one making it, we have no guarantee of anything, right? We have no guarantee that a studio is going to make our show, our movie, etc. So I think the number one thing when you're creating is, who are you? Who you have to know who you are, be authentically yourself, whatever number of buckets that puts you into, and begin there and write, because that is the thing that you're going to be able to make and sell and convince somebody to give you money to make, because you are undeniably the person to tell this story. Then the bigger question can be, well, I want to make something commercial that all Muslims can watch in maybe it's family, maybe it's for senior citizens, maybe it's this way, where I do have like the haram police won't come after me. If that's what you want to do, great. But that can be like a third or a fourth or a fifth project. But the thing that makes you you, like I feel like the number one way to be who we are is expunge and excavate the shame that we carry every single day. Do you feel shame being Muslim? Do you feel shame in having a body? Do you feel shame in telling the truth of what you do when no one is watching? That, to me, if you can like get beyond the shame, then you can write the truth. And so that is like sort of like the writing question, and the creative question is much deeper than just, will my parents be mad at me for making this? Like, you have to decide, are you okay with them being mad at you? And also, I mean, my answer was yes. Everyone is mad at me. I've gotten death threats for many, many years at this point, just for being alive and stating who I am, much less writing these characters. So you have to make these negotiations as well along the way, but it's not just your work, it's about you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Fawzia, and Sagar for saying that, because first of all, everyone should be watching all these shows. Sagar's absolutely right. We have to support all of these shows because I want to see them on TV. Like this, this is just, to me, this is amazing when we see them. You have to watch them and you have to support them. And our humanity is vast and it's diverse, and we can't Muslims are not racially, ethnically, socioeconomically, sexuality wise, we're not one unified group. We are very diverse. And so to have these diverse stories, we have to have them all represented in their authenticity. I guess I'm just going to ask one question. If each of you could just end just briefly, and we will be submitting a poll for our audience members. Please take it to, tell us how we did on this webinar, but just what advice do you have for these filmmakers? What advice do you have to overcome these obstacles, especially like in this moment? What would you tell the audience here right now? And so maybe Poppy, we could start with you. Yeah.
Whoa. Totally. I really like what Fawzia just said. Um, I yeah, I just really feel like even if it doesn't happen immediately, when you show up exactly as yourself, in time the right people come to you. I guess just like using my own personal experience, there was a gap between my relationships and ruptures and like things falling away before other things filled that spot. And I just had to live with a period of time of like feeling quite isolated and lonely and sad, but trusting that like I was in right relationship with myself, and therefore like the right things that were meant for me would happen to me. And I think that is very true for being an artist in this industry at all. Because I think the minute you lose your own sense of self or like internal compass, like the industry is intense, and it will just like, it will make you question your self-worth. It'll make you like hyper self-critical. It'll do all of those things. So I feel like it's a lot of the like not even just the internal work, but trusting that like even if there is a gap of being like no one's understanding the thing that I'm making, no one is showing up, no one's financing it right now or whatever, like if you believe in it enough, if you feel like this is 100% authentically me, you're going to find the right people that'll come. And you just have to like kind of grit your teeth through the period of time because there is going to be loneliness and isolation, and that's inevitable. So I would just say don't give up during that period.
Thank you, Poppy. Yasmin.
You know, we want more, we want more, we want more, and we want you to replace us, and we want you to have bigger ideas. And, you know, and it's like at work, we keep knocking at the door until we just burst it right open. And the more that you create, and the more that you create things that you're proud of and that you feel like really like speak to your experience, like they say, write what you know, the more that you will give permission for other people to be that bold and to be courageous enough to think about what could happen and what could be said and how it expands all of the depictions. And so I want all of them. I want everything that you have to offer. I want you to keep trying. I want you to write the pilot. I want to be in it. I want you to, you know, help your fellow artists. Also, like there's sometimes like a little bit of competition, and I think that that's silly. Like if your show is doing well, like you should have people come on and write. You should have people, you know, audition for things and read for things. And you should never also feel, if you're out there and you're brand new to the writing or the thinking about art because you're in a transition, don't ever feel at all embarrassed to like reach out to one of the artists that you really look up to. A lot of them will help you, like DM them. Don't ever think that there's kind of this barrier between you and them. They're just like you, artists that were trying to figure things out. And I hope that, you know, you find people who will open doors for you. Not everyone will, but some will. So keep knocking on all of them. And if you're as enthusiastic on the 1,000th door than you were as the first door, you will make it. And those who really truly fail are those who just stop trying. So I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep writing. And I'm going to try to hopefully see if there's an opening for more representation and more accurate representation and authentic representation that feels like it's in dignity. So
Thank you,
it's
Yasmin.
to
I'll be waiting.
inspire. Yeah.
Sagar and then Fawzia. We'll end with Fawzia.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback off of both what Yasmin and Poppy said. Like, you really do not fail until you quit. You decide your own failure. And this industry is going to try to make you quit so regularly. Don't do it, because unless you really want to, but the blessing is in the struggle. I mean, what do they say? The blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice, right? It's not easy. It is not easy. It will take time. But the more you put into it and the more mistakes you make, the better your product is going to be. Your project, the piece that you put out, just put your heart into it and work with people that get you. And that's really hard to find. So, like, you know, just keep going. Don't stop and have fun doing it. If you're not having fun, then, you know, stop, take a break. You know, the moment you stop having fun, take a break, put it on the back burner, get back to it later. But this is important work and it's really hard. Do it.
Thank you. And Fawzia.
100% agree with what everyone has said. And you need patience. You know, I often reflect upon, the dream I had as an actor. And it was really kind of unrealistic because it was like, this is just going to happen. And nothing just happens. Our industry, Hollywood is capitalism. Hollywood is again, a system not really designed for our success. Hollywood is competition. And so in order for us, we're choosing to be here and work in this industry, but so we have to also figure out how to protect ourselves and both work within it, but also work outside of it. Those things to me mean nothing happens overnight. You have to be patient. You have to know who you are. You have to find love and validation outside of the system and the projects, because the projects, you will get 1,000 no's. I've been thinking about writing a book, publishing everything that was rejected and died in the creative life cycle of Hollywood, because there's so many projects that have just never seen the light of day, so much work and writing that has been done. But the thing that I can say as an indie creator and filmmaker who came from this very indie space, I mean, I was watching Issa Rae's Misadventures of Awkward Black Girl on YouTube. That was sort of my inspiration point of how can I make it? And so you can make. What do you have control over? You have control over your body, yourself, your decisions, and your actions, your jokes, your writing, your acting. And so, community matters at all stages and in all senses of the word. So what can you make? What can you make right now? What can you put on YouTube? And when we're thinking about the future is not the studio system. The future is accessibility. The future is Tubi. The future is YouTube. The future is these frontiers where people all over the world can watch the thing you made, that you made for no money, that you posted for no money, that people can watch for free. And so that it does matter. And so also, I think redefining, for me, I do this, I think, every day, which is part of my own growth, the idea of what does success look like? I think it used to look very different. And now I feel like success is this. Success is that we're able to have this conversation in a way and in a place led by people and sponsored by people who I never thought I would get to be in community with. Like, that to me is success, who would see and value my dignity and my humanity, and I'd be able to talk freely about who I am without fear of being told to shut up. So really thinking about what is success really, that also I know matters so much. And so you're not alone. There are so many others out there like you. And no matter how much you may see us as having success and being successful, we are all constantly evolving and growing and trying to figure out as well, and need each other. We need each other so badly. Because capitalism wins when we think it's just us alone in a room. But we're not.
Thank you.
Inshallah, mashallah, alhamdulillah. No Nazar.
Thank you so much to all of you. Thank you. I mean, we are so grateful to you all for taking time out of your day to be a part of this discussion. It was really important. And to Dr. Murrar, thank you so much for this study. Please, everyone, read the study, use the study, share the study, and there will be a recording of this video with some resources emailed to everybody who registered for this. Thank you so much for being here. It was a great, great honor to be here with you all. Thank you.